I would like to extend a warm welcome to all members of the Planning Committee, officers and members of the public in attendance at today's meeting. I am Councillor Christine Ward, Chairman of the Planning Committee. I would now like to hand over to Democratic Services to read the housekeeping notes.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website via YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. I would remind those in attendance to use your microphones when speaking and remember to switch them off once you have finished. Please also switch any mobiles and laptops to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. If the fire alarm rings at any time, please can everyone leave the room immediately and use the nearest fire exit, but do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point, which is located at the bottom of the car park by the garages. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have apologies, please?
We've received apologies from Councillor Malcolm Wade.
Thank you. Minutes for the 9th of July. Can you please confirm that they're correct?
Agreed.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Does anybody have any? Councillor Dowd.
Thank you, Chair. The first item, 24/10842, is within my ward. I don't attend parish planning meetings and I haven't engaged in any discussions about that before. Thank you.
Are there any more? Councillor Hartman.
Yeah, application 2510-479, Newlands Close, Blackfield. It's in my ward. However, I'm not on the planning committee and yet to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, application 25-10518, site of the former police station, Southampton Road, Lymington. It's in my ward and I will be speaking on it.
You'll be speaking as a member of the public. Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Application 23/11306 and 24/11054, the old farmhouse in Burgate, Fordingbridge is in my ward, but I don't sit on any of the local council planning committees. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now start with the presentations and we go to the first item, which is application number 24/10842. You'll find this on page 5 of your agenda. This is change of use of public house and first floor flat to day nursery. Can we please go to the presentation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just to quickly give you a bit of context on the application site, the property is currently occupied by a public house building. We are just outside of the sort of wider Hythe town centre, not too far to the north. And we are obviously deep within the built-up area here. The surrounding area is quite residential in nature. You can see there sort of the surrounding residential layout. South Street itself is sort of quite compact, with this property being unusually set back from the street frontage. To give a bit of context here, a previous application on the site, which was granted in 2023, granted consent for a number of units to the rear for holiday let accommodation, and also for this coach house building, which we'll look at in a bit more detail in a second, to be used as holiday let accommodation, but retaining the existing public house use. The current application that we've got in front of us originally related to the conversion of this coach house building to a use as independent residential accommodation. That element has now been withdrawn from the scheme, so it's still intended to just be proposed in the retained, already approved holiday let use. So the main focus of the current application then falls to the consideration of the proposed change of use of the public house to a use as a childcare nursery. There are obviously a number of issues associated with that. So we're gonna, I think, spend a little time ruminating on this plan, because I think that's probably the most relevant one. So the public house building is currently vacant and has been for some time at this point. So there's no current operation on the the site. But obviously the lawful use of the building remains as a public house for the time being, so the application has been considered in that context. Anytime we're considering the loss of a public house, obviously they represent a valuable facility in our local communities, providing opportunities for residents to sort of meet and exchange those sort of communal social activities. So they obviously do represent an important and valuable aspect of our local communities, and we do try to manage their loss where we can do. In this case, where the pub is both vacant and we have a proposed nursery use, there's obviously a balancing act to be taken in terms of the value of these uses. The nursery use itself obviously represents its own contribution to the local area and the local economy, providing sort of parents an opportunity to explore employment opportunities. If they can only have part-time childcare, that limits opportunities. So there's really a balancing act here that we've got to try and strike in terms of the provision of these facilities. The key sort of issue I think that we've tried to grapple with in the report is balancing the loss of that public house facility. As we've laid out in the report, obviously we're not too far from the main Hythe town centre here. It's walking distance to the north, and there are other pubs and facilities of a similar nature within an easy walking distance. So we didn't feel that we could afford substantial weight to the loss of the public house in that regard. And as I said, this is balanced by the positive contribution that a nursery provision makes within the local area. So the assessment we've made on that basis is, given the sort of accessible and sustainable nature of the location and the circumstances of the application site as it stands, we don't think there's an in-principle reason to object to a nursery use. However, obviously, there's still a more detailed consideration of the specific impacts on the site and the local area that needs to be undertaken, and the impacts that the proposed nursery use will have as a result of its operation. So I think there's two really key considerations in terms of just the principle of the nursery use and how it's going to operate that we've tried to bottom out in the report. The first one, which I think has obviously proved quite concerning for local residents, is the potential highways implications of the development. The applicant has produced a transport statement which sort of goes into a bit more detail exploring the implications of the development, because the Highways Authority did initially have some sort of concerns in that regard. The transport statement basically says, obviously there is an existing public house use associated with the site, and that has its own impacts which will be changed and modified as part of the proposed development. Obviously a pub, you typically have more comings and goings into the evening, more activity into the evening, whereas a childcare nursery, the comings and goings are going to focus at particular times of day when you have childcare pickups and drop-offs going on. The transport statement does try to go into a bit of a management strategy on how that's going to work. You can see here that we have one space retained for the use here, the residential holiday let use, and the 4 spaces that were approved for the units at the rear, all retained for that use. This actually falls outside of our application site now. And then we've got the 6 spaces here proposed for the nursery provision. So basically there's a management strategy where they're going to have pick-up and drop-offs scheduled so that parents can sort of have a coming and going. We'll have a look in the street scene in a second. There are existing single yellow lines along South Street. The area, I think, has, the road itself is quite narrow, so there's going to be limited capacity for additional on-road parking. As I've outlined in the report, there is some capacity on single yellow lines for sort of pickups and drop-offs, but it depends on the nature of the parking, on how that's going to be managed. The transport statement does outline that they aren't expecting, they're going to tell staff not to park on site, so those 6 spaces would be reserved solely for sort of allocated pickups and drop-offs and visitors. As I've outlined in the report, I think the parking provision that we've got on the site is compliant with our parking standards. The sort of nursery use has been identified. They do operate an existing site in Lymington, so there's going to be some sharing of staff, so it's a little bit difficult to hammer down the precise values, but they've said that there'll be 8 staff on time at any given time, a maximum of 8 with up to 40 children on the site. Based on the comments of the Highways Authority, we don't think we can substantiate that there's a harmful highway safety impact associated with these comings and goings, and as I said, it's compliant with our parking standards in terms of the sort of quantum of parking we've got on site. So subject to the sort of the transport management strategy outlined in the report, we think that there is a reasonable justification that the development will have a similar impact than the existing pub use on the site, so we don't think that there's a reason for refusal on that basis. One of the other issues is obviously potential noise and activity associated with the site. We have had some comments from our environmental health team who asked for some additional sort of justification and clarification on the use. Obviously, again, we are looking at it in the context of an existing public house use. So there is some additional noise and activity, some existing noise and activity associated with the site in this sort of residential area. And again, this sort of shift is we're looking at a shift away from maybe intensity in the evening, noise and disruption then, to a occupation during the day and sort of noise and activity and use of their space during the day. So I think the assessment that we've made in the report is that the sort of the noise and activity generated associated with this use we can control by limiting the sort of occupancy levels on the property, limiting the hours of operation and controlling the use of the rear garden area, and particularly in the context of the existing public house use, we don't think the noise activity generated associated with the site would be disruptful in the existing residential environment. One of the sort of physical changes that's associated with the development is the sort of installation of a new fence subdividing the site here. So just to give you this is obviously previously all communal space under the previous applications, so this is now going to be subdivided across here. There are a couple of physical changes which I'll talk about a bit more when we're looking at the sort of interior of the building. But just to give you a bit of context on sort of how that is all working. Just to give a bit of context on why this element was removed from the application, this is a protected tree here. We'll have a look at that in the site photos in a few more seconds. And we didn't feel that so when in the report we talk about the use of this exterior space, that's why this is now being retained as all as communal space for the sort of holiday let uses here to frame this as sort of a wider area for these whole uses as a whole. So I think the key takeaways from all of that is that we do feel that by controlling the intensity of use of the site in terms of we've got a number of conditions to try and manage the hours of operation, the use of the external areas, the number of children on site. We feel like the wider impacts of the development can be controlled to an acceptable degree, and we don't think that there'll be a harmful impact in terms of the highways implications of the development, all of the additional noise and activity and comings and goings associated with the site. We'll just now move on to a little bit and have a little look in a bit more detail. So you can see here, this is the new planned layout for the external area to the rear. We are obviously in the Hythe Conservation Area as well. As I said, this is one of the physical alterations associated with the site. We don't think that the subdivision of this space, you can see the proposed fence there and planting, we don't think that represents a harmful impact on the conservation area. Just to give you a bit of context, this is the previous floor plan. The building has now been partially gutted, so the previous sort of bar paraphernalia isn't in place anymore. In the report, I've talked about the potential relationship between the coach house use and some of the upper floors here, which will be potentially slightly different. You can see here this was previously, this was previously a residential unit up here associated with the bar use, and it's now going to be changed into the nursery use here. There was some concern about the relationship between these windows and the coach house unit on the next door unit, so we've recommended a condition to try and control that relationship. We'll see a couple of photos showing that relationship in a second. So just to give a bit of context on the building, this is our existing pub building. Not many physical alterations have been proposed. There are a couple of minor physical alterations to the coach house building, which we've discussed in the report. These are retrospective, so if you've seen the building, they are regularising the existing appearance of the building. There's some changes to the cladding on the front here and some of the window forms. So just to show you the photos, this is the building itself. As I said, you can see we've got the setback area and the parking will be in the front here. but there is obviously this existing frontage was originally used for parking. You can see here South Street and the sort of existing parking restrictions in South Street. This is looking to the rear. You can see this is looking back towards the building. So when we're talking about the installation of the new fence, that will be cutting across this area here. And you can see here this is that new holiday-let use to the rear of the site. That's just having a look back at that. Obviously the estate is currently in partial construction, and that is that protected tree as well there you can see. This is the sort of outlook from those windows that we're talking about. So this is from the pub looking towards the coach house building, and this is from the coach house looking back towards the pub. So this is that relationship that we were trying to ensure that there isn't a sort of harmful outlook between these two sets of windows. That's what we're seeking to control by condition there. And this is just a few more shots of the pub, so you can see in a bit more context to the rear and the sort of proposed garden area that will be retained for the nursery provision. So as I said, to summarise, we think that the impacts of the nursery would provide a sort of a positive use within the local community. We are situated close to the Hythe town centre and the associated facilities and public houses there, so we don't think that the loss of the pub is intrinsically unacceptable. We think that the impacts on highway safety and amenity can be managed through the use of conditions controlling the intensity of the use, and I've obviously balanced out in the report the implications associated with the conservation area, which will be, I think, minimal in terms of the context of the proposed physical alterations to the site. So on those basis, we think that the suite of conditions that we've proposed to control the use can adequately mitigate the impacts of the development, and we have therefore recommended approval of the development. I can answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers. We have Mr. Gary Bradford, who is the agent, and Miss Louise Hooper, who is an objector. You both have 3 minutes. So, Mr. Bradford, if you'd like to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Councillors. This application received a fair few comments and publicity over the last 10 months. However, the application is presented with full support from the case officer and a recommendation for approval. During the application, we've worked with the case officer and consultees to resolve issues and presented amended plans and additional documentation as a result. The case officer's report is very detailed on these amendments and the pertinent points for which I'm sure you've reviewed. The tree team and highways have no objection. The case officer is content with the information presented relating to environmental health and conservation. The joint applicant currently operates a 30-child nursery in Lymington. This nursery would be in addition to this nursery with a further 40 child places to serve the waterside area. This would provide additional employment opportunities both for nursery staff and parents going back to work. As can be seen in the accompanying documents, Hampshire County Council have confirmed that in the near future there is likely a shortfall in nursery provision to which this site will go towards fulfilling. There are currently 7 bars within 500 metres of the malt, a further 5 bars within just over a mile. That's 12 drinking establishments, not including restaurants close by. In the last 20 years, only 2 pubs have closed in Hythe. In that time, 3 additional, smaller, more modern drinking establishments have opened. These are located in the town centre where there is a greater footfall. The loss of the malt and hops will not be detriment to the vitality of Hythe. It is considered that a handful of residents will lose their, it is accepted that a handful of residents will lose their favourite local, which is unfortunate. Although the malt did close its doors over 2 years ago for refurbishment, and these residents are now presumably supporting the remaining establishments in Hythe. Upon consultation with Hampshire Highways and the case officer, the proposed parking spaces were increased from 4 to 6. An important point to consider is that a nursery is different to a preschool. A nursery has flexible start and finish times. A preschool has fixed start and finish times, where all children are dropped off and picked up at the same time. As is detailed in the supporting documents and agreed by Highways, the nursery operation allows for a managed pick-up, drop-off with allocated slots for parents to arrive and spread the flow of traffic over a period of time. In addition to this, the nursery operator utilises a specific mobile app for parents to use to communicate with the child's key worker. This allows communication to take place outside of drop-off times, making drop-off and pick-up quicker. The nursery also has a dedicated key worker allocated each morning to receive the children at the door for a quicker drop-off. In summary, I think this is an opportunity for two local ladies to provide a service to the local community which is much needed. I think this application needs to be viewed upon its merits and not upon what people consider may have happened in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miss Hooper, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, good morning, everybody. I want to ask a question, please. Have all the councillors involved in the planning actually been to the site? Could you raise your hands if you have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, well, I think if you had visited the site, you would find that it is not going to be difficult, not going to be easy for anybody to park to drop their children off. South Street is not a wide road, and we have lorries delivering to Waitrose and businesses along Shore Road and to the South Street Centre. We have people, residents going to shop in the village, and it is a busy road. I know because I live in Mariners Mews, which is just sited off South Street. Sometimes there is absolutely nowhere to park for people, and they tend to come into the Mews to park in there. Our parking in the Mews is very limited. We have a problem with the pub not being reinstated. It was promised verbally, apparently, that the pub would be just refurbished and reopened for the local people to enjoy. This has been reneged on. I really don't understand why this has happened. The pub is a perfectly viable property. They didn't open until 5 or 6 in the evening, so the daytime noise element of this argument is really non-existent. The houses behind the pub were going to be affiliated to the pub, so now no pub. What happens to the houses? They're going to be used as holiday lets. Now, traffic then coming in and out of the area designated behind the pub, they're going to be in and out onto the road all the time, which is added traffic for coming into South Street. And the final thing I'd like to say is that the landlady of the pub was a very strict and fair landlady. She always made sure there was no trouble, and if there was, the people would be removed from the pub. She always kept it nice and quiet, and we appreciate that of her. I just wonder, given that there are 277 objections to this change of use to day nursery, there's not a lot of democracy going on. And I think that South Street, people don't adhere to the 20-mile-an-hour limit. And I can honestly say I think that it's an accident waiting to happen, which is a very worrying issue. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. We just have to remember, members, that this is no longer a pub. It won't operate as a pub in the future, and we have to consider the application as it stands. So questions, please, to officers or speakers. Councillor Dowd.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask for clarification over the parking arrangements? Did I understand correctly that the staff who are going to be operating in this preschool will not have allocated parking spaces on site?
Yeah, so as part of the applicant's transport statement, they've indicated that staff will be told not to park on site, and they'll be told to avail themselves of sort of local car parks within the Hythe town centre and walk to the site, or other available on-road park.
And am I also correct in thinking that the staff will be operating between the two sites, the Pennington site and the Hythe Village site?
I mean, I obviously can't comment in detail on their specific business operation, but yes, my understanding is that the intention is that staff will be flexible between the two sites that they currently operate. But obviously, that well, if we were to grant consent, they would have a use on the site that they could operate as they see fit.
Okay, and also I'm just curious. We've had a table of arrivals and departures. How have these figures actually come about? I mean, we know that the pub was closed for refurbishment for some time. So are these daily uses, current daily uses, based on when it was a pub or as it is in this interim stage?
So my understanding is they've used standard TRICS data, which is basically various use classes have certain trip rates associated with them. So they've done a sort of an assessment on that basis rather than a specific sort of assessment of...
Right, so it's not based on actual movements, it's based on a projection of what they might be.
That's my understanding, yes. I mean,
right.
Obviously it has been reviewed by our highways consultant, and they've said that they are happy with the data that's been submitted.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Sorry, I should have mentioned at the start that they do rent or have a licence to occupy a town council building in Pennington, which I completely forgot to mention. But that's just a point of it, so it gives me more knowledge on that. My question is just on the parking. Where's the nearest car park for staff to park in? What's the distance?
So there are a couple of car parks in the Hythe town centre. I don't remember those figures off the top of my head, but it's within sort of half a kilometre or so. There are a couple of different car parks. There is obviously also, not necessarily on South Street itself, but there is on-road parking available in the wider area, which staff could avail themselves of if they were minded to do so in terms of legal available car parking.
So, sorry, I'm just trying to get, because I don't know that part of Hythe and Dibden very well, how long would it take for someone to walk from a car park to the actual nursery? Because I'm trying to think of the actual reality of, it's all well and good them saying it'll only be limited to visitors, but if you're a member of staff, it wouldn't take much for it to become lax and for them to say, we'll be fine, we'll just park. So what's how are we going to manage the on-street parking on that as well? Because surely they'll just park in a nearby road.
So, I mean, in terms of, obviously, if they want to make use of legal on-road parking, they can do so. As I said, on South Street itself, there are obviously single yellow lines which do prevent permanent parking. You can do pickups and drop-offs, but you can't park permanently. So within the immediate sort of South Street frontage, but obviously if someone wants to park legally on a road, we can't control that.
Are there any more questions? In that case, we'll go into debate. Councillor Frampton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, I know from living not too far away from the school what a nightmare it is when the cars turn up to drop off and pick up, even when perhaps they're in walking distance. The problem we have here in using that as an excuse not to go with officer's recommendation is that highways have not put in an objection, and if we were to go to, the applicants would go to appeal, if we turn it down, the mere fact that highways have said it's fine, we would just be booted out of the room. And so, given the fact that it's not a pub anymore, and unfortunately we're losing about 2 public houses a day, it's never going to be a pub again. They're just not economic. It is a tragic situation across the country, but I think we've got to try and make the best of what's here. And I believe that, in fact, using this as a nursery is probably about the best alternative for what we've got. And so, whilst I think the sticking point would have been parking, if counties say it's not a problem, then it's not a problem.
Councillor Sleep.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with those comments. as a nursery, I just think in my mind we've got 40 parents whose the wives can go back to work, and that to me is very important in our communities. With family, we all know the circumstances when our children need to try and get their children in care or whatever. It's bank of mum and dad and granddad, isn't it? But this is an opportunity to use a facility that I think is perfect for that community. Despite all the protestations, I think we've got to be realistic and say this is the future. We can't look back on the past, unfortunately. We have lost our pubs, but we have to live with that. And mainly, highways haven't disagreed against it, so I propose we accept it.
Does anybody else have anything to say? Councillor Dowd.
Yes, I'm not happy with how a number of things have been presented in the document. The pubs that were cited as alternatives do not have the outside space that this pub had. So we are losing a well-respected and well-used community venue. I understand the argument, it's already happened and it's not going to be a pub again, but I think it does need to be said that a well-used and respected community venue is being lost. We all know about the highways issue. I do not consider that this is going to be a happy scenario. It is going to cause issues in an already difficult road where a number of elderly residents have to cross to reach the village centre. So there are going to be issues there. I understand the argument that the nursery is going to manage how people come, but we all know all of the establishments where parents drop off children in the village are all experiencing the same issues where the ACSOs, the County Council Parking Enforcement Officer and various other councillors are being asked on a regular basis to manage what is an impossible situation where stressed out parents are desperately trying to drop their kids off on the way to work and really don't think about how they are managing their vehicles. As someone who walks down South Street on a regular basis, there are many times when I either have to cross the road or walk around vehicles that are parked across the pavement because that's the way they do it, because their need is greater than people using the pavement. So there are going to be lots of issues. This is unfortunate, and I'm not happy about the situation here, but I understand the points, and I have to accept that on balance, it does appear that this is going to go ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dowd. I need to bring legal in here. Can you please comment? Thank you.
Well, not specifically on what Councillor Dowd said.
No.
I'm picking up on a couple of things that Ms Hooper said. She alluded to the number of objections. Just to remind you, you've heard me say this, well, many of you have heard me say this many times before. Objections are weighed, not counted. One person making a good point still makes a good point. 100 people making a bad point still make a bad point. So in any event, and again, I've told you this before, this is not a democratic process. You are not here to represent your constituents. You are here in a quasi-judicial capacity to consider all the evidence put before you and come to a balanced judgment on whether the application is acceptable or not. Just thought I'd make those points to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hawkins.
Yes, good morning, Chairman. I think this is fantastic for our younger people. People forget about our youngsters, and it's a good start in life for them, and I think it's important that when we get the opportunity to take over an empty building to put this for our young people, then I'm all for it.
Councillor Davis.
My outstanding issue is parking, because as much as the applicant says that it's going to be limited to visitors only, I can just foresee some really serious parking issues on South Street and the roads adjacent to it. I don't think that's been adequately addressed in the application or the comments from the officers. You can wish all you like. In terms of our parking SPDs, we should be making on-site provision for staff members. You can't expect staff members to walk in from God knows where to try and get to work. It's not fair.
That's why we have legs. Councillor Sleep.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say that I actually live with a school behind me, so I know all about parking, I know all about the issues that we have to put up with, and it's been going on for my time, 37 years or whatever, but all I can say is our society has changed. We have situations where everyone's in a rush, the children do get dropped off at the gates, it's chaos, but unfortunately, until we get our police forces or whoever eventually is going to take control of all of this and get it sorted out for safety, because children are at risk, we watch them even going across the zebra crossings at our place to actually come off the car park areas. So until someone gets control of it and stops it, our society is suffering, but someone's got to take hold of it eventually. At the moment, we can't consider that. We are considering this facility, and I think that's how we should view it. The traffic is a problem at every school. I mean, whatever you try and do, I've been involved in safety issues with schools to try and get the children to ride their bikes. So it's something we just have to live with at the present. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything to say? In which case, we have a proposal to accept the recommendation, which is to grant. That's been proposed by Councillor Sleep and seconded by Councillor Frampton. I'll come back to the speakers. You have 1 minute to respond. If I can go to Mr. Bradford, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Just to confirm, the nearest car park is about 200 metres away in New Road. And I think if you take the accepted Lambeth model, for highways, then they accept up to 500 metres for staff to walk to work. Just picking up on a couple of other points. Oh, crikey, I can't remember what I was going to say now. Well, I think that's fine. Okay, thanks.
Ms Hooper, you have 1 minute to respond.
Right, first of all, I think the New Road car park is on site more than 200 metres away from the proposed development. I'm just very concerned about people dropping their children off on one side of the road, having parked illegally, and the children have no sense of traffic. They really don't understand all this stuff. And they'll be running across the road and getting mown down by an articulated lorry that happens to be delivering food for us to eat. This is my main concern, apart from the parking, which is going to be a total nightmare, apart from the traffic up and down South Street constantly all day as it is, without the added pressure of people dropping their children off to a nursery. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now then go to our electronic vote. The recommendation again, as I say, is to grant. So can you please vote now? Thank you. 9, 10.
It's a conspiracy.
One, two, three, four. Right. Is it easier if we just start again?
I'll tell you what, if you want to revert back to a show of hands for this one.
Okay. The system seems to be letting us down, so we'll do a show of hands.
Can't beat the old system.
All of those that agree to grant, please raise your hands. That's 9, 1 against and 1 abstention. Oh, sorry. I'm still looking at the electronic one, so we go back then. Okay. So those that refuse, raise your hands. And those that abstain, 1. Okay, I think we got there, and that's been granted. Thank you very much. Estate, application number 23/11306. You will have had updates on this, and I think there's another one that you want to tell us about. So if you'd like to go ahead then, Vivian, with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, members and public. Committee updates for this first item. Condition 8 on the list of conditions for this particular application can be deleted because it doubles up with condition 7, which is a more precise wording for getting those details. And then the other condition numbers will amend accordingly. The habitat mitigation contribution on page 47 of your report should read 42,941. And we've had some late corrections to 3 of the drawings, which are listed in condition 2 on page 49 of your report. In each case, the revision number goes up a number, and it doesn't change the proposed scheme. It just makes clarifications and corrects title details and adds contours onto an existing site plan. Another drawing amendment, there was a lot of drawings toing and froing over the course of this application, and I missed one off, and that's detailed as 23.3484.109 revision P7, which will be added in to the condition, or the list of planned conditions. In addition to those updates, over the course of the last few weeks, we've been requesting BAT reports to be provided following further survey work. We have now received those reports, the final report with some corrections relating to, or some additional bits relating to a request from our ecologist relating to the equipment used for the survey work, and details regarding the timing of works was only actually received, well, my system received it at 29 last night, so I found it this morning. Unfortunately, the ecologist has been in meetings this morning and has not been able to respond to those clarifications. Hopefully there won't be an issue, but that would need to be addressed prior to the final decision being issued. So that's the updates. Moving on to the presentation. Now, this application has been to committee back in November last year, but for those, I understand there's a couple of members that weren't on the committee at that time, so just to run through where we are. This is the red site plan, Salisbury Road at Burgate on the corner of Frying Court Road. There's a bit more context locally. And I'll just point out here, there's a large structure just off the southwest corner of the site there. That's a barn on the adjoining land, which is proposed to be removed as part of the strategic site, which is shown here in hatched blue with the site in the northeast corner there, just so you can get an idea of where it is in relation to that strategic site. The plan on the right is from our policy in the local plan. So adjacent to this site is public open space. There's no housing immediately adjacent to it. So here's the existing site plan. The buildings are labelled, so the farmhouse at the front here is building A. Building B is this structure to the south. Building C in the back garden of the farmhouse. Building D is this structure here. And then the L-shaped building at the back of the site to the west is building E. And that's how the report identifies these buildings. So a couple of photographs of the farmyard here. Firstly, this is looking west towards building E on the left-hand side. This is building D here. And that's the farmhouse looking in towards the road. So here we have the proposed site plan. Now, previously the application was written up for refusal. There were several reasons for refusal, which following the deferral, the agents have tried to address those reasons for refusal, as well as the listed building issues, which were the reason the application was previously deferred from committee. So in order to deal with that, the reasons, one related to the residential amenity of the occupants of the easternmost house in this reconstructed building because of the amenity space and the boundary treatment for that property. There was concerns with regard to the loss of building D and the design of the reconstructed building B to the south here, together with a 2.1 metre high acoustic fence which was proposed along the southern boundary. There was some slight highway concerns remaining at that time as well, which the applicant has now addressed. And finally, the habitat mitigation requirements was a reason for refusal previously. That particular reason is now being worked through. We're getting the solicitors to draft a legal agreement to resolve that particular issue. So moving on to the proposal, there's been some realignment of the access through from Salisbury Road to the east, through the site, and the reopening of an access onto Frying Court Road. This has involved some alterations to the boundary wall, which is largely hidden by vegetation, but it is still a wall there, which is also curtilage listed. So there are some alterations to that, and Highways have now accepted that the proposal addresses their previous concern. Part of building D is now to be retained, and that's shown as an outbuilding in the garden of the farmhouse. We have some slight changes between the two new, the new build building to the west of the site and the reconstructed building B to the south. Previously, building B contained 2 dwellings, and the new build on the west here contained 3 dwellings. It's now the other way around. We've got 2 dwellings in the new build, and we've got 3 dwellings in the reconstructed barn to the south. There's also a minor alteration to the bin store located in this corner of the site in terms of its design and also who shares it, as not all the properties have their own individual location for bin stores. And then finally, we've got a reduction in the height of the proposed acoustic fence along the southern boundary, which has now been reduced to a 1.8 metre high acoustic fence rather than the 2.1 previously. So those are the changes. And just sort of whipping through the photographs, most of you will have seen these before. These are photos of the farmhouse. These are the proposed floor plans, which are very similar to the existing situation, but there's more detail on the listed building consent for that particular building. And just a rear elevation, one wall to be removed at the back of the property here, so it's an open link to the outbuilding. And here we have building B, which has seen better days. No further comment on that. But one of the proposed dwellings in this is largely going to take up the footprint of this remaining structure. So that's the other 2 will be in the reconstructed element, which is behind here. You can see some of the walls are remaining there. That's just the same building from the front of the site. This grassed area to the front here is part of the garden for plot 6. This access to the side and the large barn on the adjoining site is visible at the back there. That's owned by the developer who is dealing with the strategic site, and I think this is going to be a footpath eventually once that site is all built out. So here we have the floor plans for the reconstructed building B, showing 3 dwellings, and the elevations, which are a lot more barn-like than the previous submission that was considered in November. So the Conservation Officer has assessed that and made recommendations. We've got fewer roof lights in this structure too, and we've got what would appear to be traditional barn doors and shutters on both sides of the building. So just a photograph of building C, which is hidden behind the ivy here. And this is part of building D. This is the back of the farmhouse. building D here, this section would be removed. The section behind here would be retained. And that section is this corrugated element. The lean-to would go, building C here would go, and this lean-to part of building D would also go. That's just a couple of shots of building E, which was modern building, and that would all go as well. To be replaced by a new building comprising 2 dwellings. The design of this is also changed to limit its impact on the setting of the listed building, and it's quite a low-key structure with a lean-to at the back. And here we've just got some existing and proposed site sections through, so you can see the retention of the curtilage listed outbuilding and how the new dwellings sit at the back of the site. That's the reconstructed building B. This is from the road. And then just through the site, as though you're standing with your back to the farmhouse. Just a quick refuse store. And the recommendation is now to recommend approval for the application. Whilst it does remain contrary to policy DM20, the additional details that have been submitted since November allow for the tilted balance to be considered in view of the heritage assets within the site. Amendments to the scheme since the previous consideration at committee have resulted in residential amenity and highway safety issues being addressed, and subject to detailed conditions, the proposal is now considered acceptable. If any members want to see plans of the previous submission, I do have them, and they're in the report anyway, so if there's anything in particular you want to see, then let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. I know a lot of work has gone on between the officers and applicant to get back to where we are today. We have just the one speaker, Mr. Russell, who is a planning consultant. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and members, and Vivian for that presentation. That was really helpful. I think, well, I hope everybody agrees that this development is now a long time coming. Just to illustrate that, building B, which is the curtilage barn, when we started out had a roof, and as you saw, no longer does. So I think the urgency of this development is clear in terms of refurbishing and remediating the Grade 2 listed farmhouse, which is on the, as I understand anyway, on the council's internal at-risk register. And as the case officer and conservation officer have both now agreed, the residential development is necessary in order to cross-subsidise the refurbishment of that at-risk heritage asset. So I think yeah, we can hopefully all agree that the heritage benefits here are significant. Just to touch on some of the other points, which I know Vivian's already covered, but one of the main changes that we've made compared to the previous scheme was the retention of part of building D in the rear garden of the farmhouse, which the council's conservation officer was clear that had some historic value. So now we've retained that, and that will be refurbished in addition with the farmhouse itself. From a highways perspective, I know there were concerns previously about large vehicles on Tryon Court Road sort of tracking onto highways land or even onto the land of neighbouring properties opposite the site. Tracking drawings were submitted, and Hampshire Highways are happy on all accounts now, so those issues have been resolved. And then similarly, in terms of residential amenity, the revisions to the layout and the typology and the internal layouts of dwellings and boundary treatments ensures that there's not going to be any overlooking, any adverse impacts on neighbouring properties, and also the amenity space has been rejigged just to ensure that each property gets a decent sized garden. Now, just to briefly recap, members, following your last decision to defer this back to officers so that a positive recommendation could be reached, we've worked hand in glove with officers, with Vivian and with the conservation officer to get this application to a point where they are able now to support it. And I hope that members, you'll be inclined to follow the recommendation of your expert officers and grant this much needed development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please, of Councillor Woods.
Many thanks for the excellent presentation by the officer. Looking through the notes, there's concern by the parish council about the flooding issue in Frying Court Road. And I can't see it addressed anywhere in the notes. Is it being addressed or is it being ignored?
I think I put it in the report, yes. On page 48 of the report in other matters, I just wrote that also a local resident raised this issue, and I've said it's acknowledged that land to the east of the A338 Salisbury Road falls within flood zones 2 and 3, although this designation does not breach the road or the site, and access provisions are fully outside of this area, which is in flood zone 1. I am aware that I've seen photographs. I think some of the submitted documents on this application show Frying Court Road under some water, and I think Frying Court Road is conducive to being wet in winter along its whole length, not just outside here. It's not. It's in flood zone 1. There's no requirement for the Environment Agency to be involved in this situation. It's a highway flooding issue, as far as I'm aware. So we've not involved the Environment Agency because they would just throw it back at us saying it's in flood zone 1. What are you talking about?
So does that mean there's no actions to try and alleviate the problem?
Well, I think, as I understand it, all developments, there will have to be drainage issues dealt with as part of this, and I think one of the conditions we have on either the planning or the listed building consent relates to drainage around the farmhouse, so there's no standing water that's likely to damage the walls of the farmhouse. But in terms of the water on Frying Court Road, it's outside of the site. It's not on land that's owned by the developer.
I see.
And in theory, it should be the landowner that sorts that out, I would have thought.
A matter for county.
Yeah.
If it's a surface water drainage on the highway, then it would be a matter for county if it became an issue.
So it's up to Hampshire County Council, is it, rather than highways?
It's their highway, and that's where the drainage issue is, then yes.
Lord help us.
Councillor
Thank you
Sleep.
very much.
Thank you, Chair. I seem to recall on the last review of this particular project that someone actually told us that one of the local farmers was clearing his drainage at the time because there was a culvert blocked, and that was causing much of the problems, as I recall. I don't know whether that was actually done.
Are there any more questions? Then we'll go to comments, please. Debate. Councillor Rickman.
Look at all the issues, which is what we asked, and the applicant and our officers have worked hard to get where we are today, and I would propose the recommendation, Chairman.
Yes, I'd just like to say that the system works because the officers have worked with the developers and we've resolved the problems that we saw before, and I'm glad that we did because it's been sorted, and I would second it. I think it's brilliant to see this come back to life.
Does anybody else have anything to say? Right, then I'll come back to the agent. You have 1 minute to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to address directly. I think Vivian said there potentially is a condition in the decision notice to deal with, to ensure that the development of our site doesn't worsen any drainage issues locally, and if there isn't, we're happy to agree to a drainage strategy to be conditioned. So hopefully that provides some comfort. But yeah, just to reiterate what members have said, I think when officers and applicants work together, you end up with great schemes like this. So.
Thank you. In that case, we'll go to the vote. So the recommendation is to grant to the service manager. Electronic, yeah. It was. Proposed by Councillor Rickman and seconded by Councillor Sleep. We'll now go to the electronic vote. Thank you. Oh, that, right. Has it come up? No, it hasn't come up on the screens, but that is 12. So that's unanimous. That's been granted. So we'll now go to the second part. Okay, which is the restoration of the listed building. So this you'll now find on page 57.
Doesn't need much debate, does it? Doesn't need any
No. I'm waiting for Vivian to find it on the...
Sorry, my IT isn't.
Okay. Do you want to add anything?
All I would add here is that there is so it shouldn't be there. It's not necessary. But again, all I've got in this presentation is the existing plans of the farmhouse. So you can see that it's not a huge amount different. This is the wall I mentioned earlier that's coming out. So the wall which is to the front of the property that links the outbuilding will remain.
I think you've got the wrong one up there. Put the police station up.
No.
No, that's all right.
That's the farmhouse.
Yeah.
I've got the police station up.
That's correct.
No. Oh, was it the top? Was it at the top? Yeah, it's the right plan.
Confusion. Right, okay.
So there we are. That's not the police station. That is the farmhouse.
Sorry to interrupt. Okay.
Okay, so that's just the existing elevations of the farmhouse and pictures. So just to clarify, externally, that little section at the back only will be removed. There's a couple of partition alterations inside, but pretty much the house stays the same. And just some photographs of the condition of the roof. And a better picture of building 4. So this bit with the tall pitched roof is the bit to be retained. The lean-to, building C there are both removed. Proposed site plan and the floor plans of the farmhouse. And the elevation, so there's little change there. And then just the floor plans again of the reconstructed barn, which is a curtilage-listed building. This is the elevations of what was brought to committee previously, so you can see the difference between, whilst this is quite a uniform pattern of fenestration on this particular property, what's now proposed is a bit more akin to a typical barn structure. And so we're now recommending consent for this listed building consent application. It now allows for the retention of part of building D. The detailing of building B is now considered to be more appropriate, and there are further details regarding the roof alterations to the farmhouse which will enable a specific set of conditions to this particular site. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything further to say?
No,
Proposing, are you?
As one follows the other, it's the obvious
Okay.
thing to propose again.
And Councillor Sleep, are you going to second again?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Chair. Now, could I just ask one question now, out of interest? The actual 8 building that's a galvanised structure that's going to be retained and refurbished, is it going to come back as a galvanised structure, or will it be, I mean, it is historical interest, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, they'll take away the vegetation and the buildings that they now will have consent to demolish. And yes, I don't think they're proposing to change the materials.
Okay.
Because that's...
All right, thank you.
To the vote then, which is the grant. All of those in favour, electronic vote. Have we? Are we there? 12, there we are. Okay, that's been granted. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll take a break. Can you be back by 25 past 10? I didn't have my mic on. Right, page 69, application 25/10518, site the former police station, Southampton Road. Councillor Davis will speak as ward councillor and won't be voting. So Julie, would you like to go ahead with the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. So as we said, this is the site of former police station in Southampton Road in Lymington. The application is for advertisement consent, which our main considerations are therefore the impact on amenity and highway safety. As you can see, it's on the corner of Southampton Road and Queen Elizabeth Avenue. It's on the main road into Lymington from the north. Again, another aerial photograph showing it in context. And again, just to the south here, we've got the conservation area. It's very partly shaded here, but the conservation area just starts at the side of the application site and continues towards Lymington. The site is for 32 retirement apartments, which you may be familiar with. It's now completed and they are up for sale. There's various signage advertising the sale along both roads and highlighting the sales office. So as you can see here, the position of the signage, we've got flag signs, banners, A-board, and continues around a bit more signage. And this is where the actual office is, the sales office. Here we can see the elevation plans in Southampton Road. As I say, the conservation areas to the side, but the signs are contained within the site and within the setting of the site and don't significantly impact on the setting of this designated area in our consideration. And as you can see here, the signage is softened by the TPO trees which are along the frontage and along the side. There's the side elevation. We've got a signage here, a banner sign, another banner sign advertising the sale of the units. Here's more detail of the various signs which are on the site. And this would be a temporary approval. It's considered to be appropriate to give it 2 years until all the flats are occupied, whichever is the sooner. This was considered an acceptable timescale to facilitate the sale of the units. Here we have a photograph of the front, so you can see the signage in situ. It's all behind the gate there. A couple of flag signs along the front here, and going round into Queen Elizabeth Avenue. There's less signage here. We've had no highway safety objections on this, so Hampshire County Council have not raised any concerns. Some more photographs in more context along the front and to the side. So the recommendation is to grant with standard advertisement consent conditions and a condition restricting the time, as I said, for 2 years or until all the units are occupied. This is brought to you today at committee because there's a contrary view from the Lymington Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davies, as ward councillor, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Please don't include this in my 3 minutes, but it's Lymington and Pennington Town Council. As I always love to remind people, I'm not objecting in principle to this application for advertisement consent. I have some concerns that I'd like the committee to address, if okay. I think the timescale of 2 years is too long. I would prefer 1 year. I think the banners we've had for a very long time at that site, the hoardings that were erected initially without permission on that site were quite garish, and so for a long period of time you've had this continuous advertisement presence for residents in Queen Elizabeth Avenue and on Southampton Road. This does have quite a striking impact on their visual amenity, especially for those residents in the houses on in the terraced houses on Southampton Road and on the in the block of flats next to it in Buckland House. So this is something that does have quite striking visual amenity. For anyone travelling along Southampton Road, it is quite a jarring scene to go from the Gentle Street scene of the townhouse, the terraced housing there, straight into the banners there. My particular issue is it's just outside, is the ones to the left which have, or west, or which have greater impact on the visual amenity. The time scale, I think, of 2 years is excessive. They're not going to be sold within 2 years, so it will be 2 years. We know from the previous developments that it takes 5-6 years for them to fully sell. So in terms of the time scale, it will be 2 years. I think 1 year is enough. I would be very against an extension to 2 years. There is also the banner, I think, I can't describe it. It's like a hoarding kind of style one that's on the corner, and there we go, that one. And I find that to be really off-putting. If you're walking past, or if you're in along the townhouse, that one's incredibly off-putting. So those are my concerns. So I'm not against it in principle, but I would just like those concerns noted, and perhaps look at the timescale of maybe reducing it down to 1 year.
Thank you very much. I don't think we should be speculating about how long it's going to take to sell these flats. Obviously, the sooner the better as far as you're concerned. I think they're quite fine looking flats, actually. I think they might go quicker than you expect. Questions, please. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Woods.
Can I ask Leo what the principles are of visual amenity? It says here, the scheme fails to meet the principles of visual amenity. What are the principles of visual amenity?
What it says, I guess.
Difficult to summarise in a pithy sentence. But I mean, harm to visual amenity is an amorphous concept, and it's also quite subjective. But you know, it's for you as the decision maker to decide whether you think it's harmful, bearing in mind that it is a matter of opinion, and you may have to defend that on appeal. I'm not sure that's much of an answer, but it is.
Any more questions? Do you wish to debate this? Councillor Sleep.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think all the signs are neatly tucked into the construction. I think 2 years putting a limit on them being there is a very good idea, and to be honest, I think it's brilliant that it's set up the way it is. It looks really good. And if these do go quicker than the others, we don't know whether it's site, location. Some might not be selling somewhere else after 6 years, but these might be going almost immediately. So I propose we accept it, and everything's fine.
As Councillor.
Sorry, I'm happy to second that. I do have the opposing view to the local councillor. I consider the advertising boards here quite low-key, quite in keeping with the amount of trees and everything else that's included in the screening. Haven't we done quite well to get this? Happy to second it, Chairman.
Councillor Hawkins.
Yes, thank you very much. I have an opposing view to the councillor that said the other view from Lymington and Pennington. I think there's no problems whatsoever. It's in keeping, it's nice, you've got greenery all round. What really have you got to complain about? They've got to sell them, for goodness sake, so I think it's a good idea, and I will go with it.
Councillor Dowd.
Oh, you're playing games with me now. Right, okay, thank you. Yes, I mean, obviously the company wants these sold. I am concerned, yet again, we've got a large company that thinks they can put these up without getting planning permission first. The ones that are flag style, we get numerous complaints of those about the noise they make, but I think in general, I think these are fairly well fairly well tucked in. So I don't have any objection with them compared to some that I've seen. So thank you.
Does anybody else have anything to say? We'll come back to Councillor Davies. You have 1 minute.
I won't need 1 minute. I'll just say thank you very much for your considerations. I would have preferred a one year timescale, but I accept the position of the committee.
Right, the recommendation is to grant, and that's being proposed by Councillor Sleep, seconded by Councillor Rickman. All in favour, please vote electronically. One.
Councillor Davies doesn't get a vote.
Yes.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Okay, that's been granted. That's unanimous. Okay, thank you.
No.
Now we're on page 75, application 25/10479, 10 Newlands Close, Blackfield. We don't have any speakers, so we'll go straight to the presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, members. The application before you is an application for a new detached house and an associated detached double garage within the residential garden curtilage of 10 Newlands Close in Blackfield. The plan you're looking at shows the application site outlined in red. The application site is set at the eastern end of Newlands Close and is set adjacent to Walker's Lane North on its eastern side. You can see from this plan that there is a pedestrian path to the front of the site that provides a link between Newlands Close and Walker's Lane North. You can also see from this plan that the site is situated within a residential area. You'll note how properties in both Newlands Close and Walker's Lane North are set back from their respective highways, giving the area a relatively spacious character. You'll note as well how properties in Newlands Close are typically semi-detached properties, or indeed terraces are free, with generous gaps between the individual buildings. This next plan gives you a little bit more context as to where the site is situated. So you can see that it's situated to the southeast of the main centre of Blackfield within reasonable walking distance. Then this aerial photograph provides further context. You should be able to appreciate from this photo that the existing dwelling here at 10 Newlands Close has a fairly generous garden on its eastern side, adjacent to Walker's Lane North, and this pattern is replicated at 11 Newlands Close, which is situated on the south side of Newlands Close. Taking you through the submitted plans then, this is the submitted site location plan. You'll note the generous setback from Walker's Lane North. Then this existing site plan helps you to appreciate the site and its context a little more clearly. You'll see 10 Newlands Close is a semi-detached property. You can see the generous width of garden on its eastern side, and you'll note as well that this is a design feature of 11 Newlands Close on the south side of the road. You can see that there are good-sized gaps between the individual buildings that front onto Newlands Close, which does give this end of Newlands Close an attractive sense of spaciousness. And you'll note that the property has an existing vehicular access onto Walker's Lane North, which serves an existing garage to the rear of the property. One final thing to note is how the property or the site tapers, so it's somewhat wider at the front than it is at the back. So, some photographs of the site. The image on the left shows the site's frontage onto Walker's Lane North. You'll note the existing mature hedgerow to this boundary, which creates an attractively green aspect onto Walker's Lane North. Then the image on the right shows the site's frontage onto Newlands Close. 10 Newlands Close is on the right-hand side of this pair of semi-detached dwellings that you can see. You'll note that 10 Newlands Close only has pedestrian access onto Newlands Close. The property's vehicular access is onto Walker's Lane North, which you can see here on the photo on the right. The photo on the left shows the hedgerow boundary to Walker's Lane North with the site, with the side of the existing house, which you can see beyond that. Then here we've got two more photos of the front of the property onto Newlands Close. The right image, you can see the pedestrian gate that leads to the front of the property. You'll also note the conifer hedge there that marks the existing front boundary. Then here we've got some photos of the property's rear garden area. You'll note how the existing hedgerow vegetation along Walker's Lane North here overhangs this part of the property's garden. And then these are the final two photos which I'm going to show you. The image on the left shows the side of the property and part of the rear of the property. The property's main entrance is set on its side behind this pedestrian gate that you can see here. And then the image on the right shows the garden area where the new dwelling and its associated curtilage is proposed to be provided. So here we have the proposed site plan. You can see that the proposed dwelling would be set to the side of 10 Newlands Close and how it would be separated from that property by a relatively narrow passageway of less than a metre in width. You'll also note that the passageway would extend all the way to the rear of the plot where a new detached garage building and parking area is proposed, served off a widened access. One of the things to highlight on this plan is how much narrower the gap is between the proposed dwelling and 10 Newlands Close than other spatial gaps within Newlands Close. So on this plan, you can see the spatial gaps here between 6 and 7 Newlands Close, and then between 8 and 9 Newlands Close. And then here you can see the gap between 12 and 13 Newlands Close, and you can compare all of those gaps with the gap that this application proposes. Then another point to highlight on this plan is how the properties fronting Walker's Lane North are set back from the highway. So here you can see Northwards 14, again on the opposite side of the road here, generous setbacks from the highway, which is in contrast to the proposed dwelling, which would be set uncharacteristically close to the road. And then the other point to note is how the existing dwelling at 10 Newlands Close has its main front entrance on its side elevation roughly here, meaning that the new dwelling would be set in very close proximity to that property's front entrance, replacing an open aspect with one that would be significantly enclosed. So here are the elevations of the proposed dwelling. You can see it's a two-storey dwelling. As a detached dwelling, it would not reflect the typical forms of other properties in Newlands Close. You'll also note that the side elevation here facing Walker's Lane North which officers do not consider would be a positive aspect onto that road, given the close proximity of that elevation to the road. Then here we have the elevations of the detached double garage that would be provided to the rear of the site. It would be shared between the new dwelling and 10 Walkers Lane North, so that each dwelling would have one garage space each. And then here we've got a street scene image, which officers consider exemplifies how uncharacteristically narrow the gap would be between the proposed dwelling and 10 Newlands Close, and also how the form of the dwelling would appear discordant within that street scene. Summing up then, your officers have carefully considered the proposals against policy, in particular policy ENV3 of the local plan, which amongst other things requires all developments to achieve high quality design that contributes positively to local distinctiveness, and to create buildings, streets, spaces which are sympathetic to the environment and their context in terms of layout, landscape, scale, height, appearance and density, and in relationship to adjoining buildings, spaces and landscape features. Officers consider the proposal would be very much contrary to this policy. In particular, officers consider the proposal would be cramped and intrusive in its context, and would result in development with narrower plot widths, a lack of adequate space between the dwellings and to the boundaries. Moreover, the narrow access way between the proposed and existing dwellings is considered poor design, both visually and functionally. And the proposed dwelling would also be overbearing in its relationship to Newlands Close, 10 Newlands Close, due to its proximity to that property's main entrance. The proposal also would have adverse effects on designated protected habitats that has not been mitigated. As such, the recommendation is to refuse planning permission for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. Councillor Woods.
Thanks for the presentation. I don't understand how the boundary, the red boundary, goes across the footpath at the back of the property. Is that right? It goes across the footpath?
So on this plan, you can see the passageway between number 10 Newlands Close and the proposed new dwelling. So it would be a private shared passageway between the two dwellings.
I'm talking about the bit on Walkers Lane North, at the back of the property.
So here you've got the end of the cul-de-sac here, and then you've got pavement coming either side with the footpath coming out here. And then if you're talking about Walkers Lane North here, what you've got is a crossover onto Walkers Lane North, which serves the new garage and the parking space to the side.
Thank you.
Councillor Frampton.
Yes, question of officers. Is basically the objection, I know you set out the criteria, is the basic objection the fact that a dwelling's going in there, or the fact that this particular one doesn't fit? The only reason you put great emphasis on the very narrow gap between the two. If you look at number 8 and number 7 next to it, if anybody was to come back and join the two houses together and put that gap against the hedge, so it's further away from the road, would that still be against the principle, or are you actually just looking at this particular on its own?
So we have to consider the proposal as submitted. We're not considering an alternative proposal. The site is within a built-up area, so the principle of additional dwellings in the built-up area is acceptable. The proposal as submitted we deem to be contrary to policy ENV3.
In which case, Madam Chairman, I would actually propose the refusal as officers have put.
Sir Davies.
Just happy to second. If we're all done with questions, I'm happy to second Councillor Frampton's proposal.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Councillor Sleep.
Yeah, I'd just like to say the presentation the officer's given is exactly right. When we actually look at the building line on Walker's Lane North, 14, 10, they're all on the same line off the buildings, and exactly the same when you look down Newlands Close. And I don't think anyone, I just don't understand how anyone can track. The number 10 would have to be refurbished completely and the front door in a different place before it ever gets accepted. And I think it's just a bad, it's two pegs in a big pot. Thank you.
Okay, so that was, I think, debate rather than a question. But so in debate, does anybody else have anything to say? Councillor Dow.
Other one there. Yes, I absolutely agree with Councillor Frampton there that because we've got triple terrace buildings before, so joining the new building 210 would make more sense in that view, but it still wouldn't have still wouldn't be good enough for Walker's Lane. I don't think it would be in keeping. So I think the decision's the right one. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to say anything? Councillor Woods.
I can't understand why there's been no objections to this at all. It's absolutely surprised that nobody's objected to it. Just a comment.
Right, I think we'll just go to the vote now then. The recommendation is to refuse. That's been proposed by Councillor Frampton, seconded by Councillor Davies. Please go to the electronic vote. Thank you. That's been... Okay. That has been unanimously refused. Thank you. Right, the last one, page 87, application 25/10570, 10 Deerhurst Close. This has come to us for transparency reasons, as it's next door to a member of staff. So if you'd like to go ahead with the presentation, thank you.
Good morning, members. Thank you. So we're looking at 10 Deerhurst Close, residential property in a residential estate setting. See the outline of the application site there in red, sort of tucked behind other properties on Deerhurst Close, with a driveway that extends round to cul-de-sac Turning Head, highlighted there. Use some context of the site. You can see the footprint outline of the existing residential property on the site, two-storey house, and the position of its respective neighbours and those to the rear on the adjoining road, and then to the south. There is a protected TPO'd oak tree towards the front of the site on the boundary with the neighbouring property. And here you have the outline footprint of the proposed double garage that is subject to this application. You'll see from the case officer report that the principle of the garage was accepted some years ago now with a planning permission granted. That was not implemented and therefore expired after the 3 years, and this has resulted in the requirement for a revised application that you have before you today. A couple of photos looking along the driveway leading to the siting of the application and the proposed garage. Clear picture of the large tree that I described and the edge there of the turning head at the end of Deerhurst Lane. Proposed siting of the garage looking from the north, resident already parking their private vehicle on the site, broadly in that location that the proposed garage will be sited, and there again you can see the tree in the background. And then looking along the driveway again, there you can see the house, the existing house to the left, the car and the position of the proposed garage. You'll see from the report that the ground levels do drop away and you get a sense of that from that photo. You can also see the edge of the tree on the corner of the photo, a sufficient distance away from the garage that there will be no direct impact from construction, albeit some protection measures will be secured to avoid any damage during the construction process. Pretty basic, straightforward garage design. As I said, it's a double garage with the 2 garage door opening looking along the driveway. Pretty simple, straightforward, 6x6 size for 2 cars to be parked. And they're giving you a suggestion of what the front of the garage elevation in the location positioned towards the southern boundary. And we go back to, too far. This drawing, to remind you, separation distances to neighbouring residential properties. There may be that there'll be some shading cast into the gardener number 8, and it will be visible from the gardener number 1, but not to the extent that would compromise their residential amenity. Therefore, the proposed development will have an acceptable relationship with the neighbours and the residential character of the area. Accords with policies and objectives of the development plan is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Does anybody have anything to say? Then the recommendation is to grant. Does somebody want to propose that? Councillor Davies? Okay. So we go straight to the vote then. So that's grant subject to conditions proposed by Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Frampton. All of those in favour, please vote. And that's been granted unanimously. So that brings us to the end of our session. Oh, go home and